In February 2026, a ruling from Hong Kong's High Court thrust one name back into the global spotlight. Jimmy Lai, 20 years in prison. For many, the immediate reaction was straightforward. This is a legal case. Some focused on the evidence, the procedures, the statutory language. Others debated whether the sentence was too harsh. Still others centered the discussion on Lai's personal fate. But to understand why this moment resonates so widely, you have to zoom out. If you remember Hong Kong 20 years ago, it was a city full of contradictions, yet deeply confident. It was Asia's premier financial hub, the primary gateway for global capital flowing into and out of mainland China. It operated under a common law system. Its courts were widely respected. Capital and information moved freely. In that narrative, Hong Kong was unique, under Chinese sovereignty, but with a high degree of autonomy. One country, two systems was not just a political slogan, it was a governing framework. Multinational corporations, global banks, and hedge funds headquartered there not out of sentiment, but because of predictability, because of rules, because they believed the law in Hong Kong could be calculated. After 2019, that story began to shift. That year, months of protests and unrest shook the city. Airports were occupied. Subway stations were vandalized. Business districts shut down. For supporters, it was political expression. For authorities, it was a breakdown of order. In 2020, Beijing enacted the Hong Kong National Security Law. The legislation fundamentally reshaped the political landscape. National security became the organizing principle of governance. Electoral reforms followed. The concept of patriots governing Hong Kong was formalized. If 2019 was an earthquake, the years after 2020 were structural reconstruction. Viewed in that context, the 20-year sentence in 2026 is not just an isolated ruling. Procedurally, the decision rests on an existing legal framework. Hong Kong officials, including Chief Executive John Lee, have repeatedly emphasized that safeguarding national security is a constitutional duty and a red line. From Beijing's perspective, national security comes first, consistently and unequivocally. But internationally, the interpretation goes beyond statutory language. On Wall Street, in Singapore family offices, in London law firms, decision-makers are not primarily asking ideological questions. They are running risk models. They are asking three things. Is the system stable? Are the rules predictable? Can business decisions be separated from political considerations? In global finance, judicial independence is not just a legal principle. It is an asset. It is reputational capital. Credit rating agencies incorporate rule of law assessments into sovereign risk reports. Portfolio managers factor political risk premiums into allocation decisions. When national security becomes the core organizing principle of governance, external observers may begin to question whether the distance between executive authority and the judiciary has narrowed. And in markets, perception often matters as much as formal reality. Over the past few years, there have been visible shifts. Some international media outlets relocated operations. Certain NGOs closed offices. Reports suggest some multinational firms moved regional headquarters to Singapore. At the same time, Hong Kong remains a major IPO venue. Cross-border investment flows through Stock Connect and Bond Connect continue. Offshore renminbi trading remains active. That is the complexity. Political space has narrowed, yet financial functions continue. So the real question is whether this model can endure. Three structural indicators will matter most. First, capital flows. Hong Kong has long been described as the bridge into mainland China. Through trading links and financial connectivity programs, international investors access Chinese markets within a structured framework. As long as that gateway function remains intact, Hong Kong retains strategic relevance. Second, talent retention. Financial centers are not built on skyscrapers. They are built on people. Lawyers, accountants, traders, analysts. Whether top-tier professionals choose to stay will shape the city's long-term vitality. There have been reports of emigration waves, but also signs of demographic stabilization. It is too early to determine whether this is cyclical or structural. Third, legal competitiveness. Hong Kong has long been one of Asia's leading arbitration hubs. Cross-border contracts often specify Hong Kong as the venue for dispute resolution because of its common law heritage and enforceability. Continued confidence in that system would signal durability. These indicators do not shift overnight, but over time, they accumulate. It is also important to recognize that this trajectory did not begin in 2020. Political polarization was rising years earlier. Social divisions deepened. Concerns about external influence and systemic risk were building in Beijing's strategic calculations. In that sense, the national security law was not an anomaly. It was the culmination of a longer recalibration. From Beijing's perspective, it is a rational response to perceived systemic threats. Sovereignty and stability take precedence. From many Western liberal democracies' perspective, it signals convergence between Hong Kong's governance model and mainland norms. Less political pluralism, tighter civic space, a transformed media environment. These interpretations are not mutually exclusive. They reflect different strategic baselines. For ordinary residents, however, the questions are far more immediate. Will housing prices fall? Will jobs disappear? Will my children study? Is my retirement secure? These concerns are more tangible than geopolitical narratives. On the surface, Hong Kong still looks familiar. Neon lights glow. Restaurants are full. Markets open and close every day. Trading numbers scroll across screens. But structural change rarely announces itself loudly. It hides in regulatory amendments, in migration statistics, in footnotes of corporate risk disclosures. The 20-year sentence, therefore, becomes symbolic. It signals that when authorities deem it necessary, national security provisions will be enforced with severity. It defines boundaries. Clarity can be a governing strategy, but clarity can also carry costs. For many international investors, tolerance for pluralism has long been equated with systemic resilience. A system that can absorb dissent is seen as adaptable. When political space narrows in the name of stability, observers may question long-term flexibility. At the same time, others argue that after the turmoil of 2019, stability itself is the asset. As long as streets are calm and commercial order is maintained, investors may adjust to new parameters. After all, many global financial centers operate under varying degrees of political constraint. This is not a simple story of decline or renewal. It may be a story of repositioning. Hong Kong could be entering a new equilibrium. Clearer political boundaries, institutionalized security priorities, while retaining financial openness. Whether that combination is sustainable will not be decided in a courtroom. It will be determined over time through capital allocation patterns, corporate disclosures, demographic choices, and market behavior. 20 years is more than a sentence. It is a marker. Internally, it reinforces a security-first governance model. Externally, it signals that Hong Kong's transformation has moved from transition to consolidation. 10 years from now, 2026 may be remembered as a turning point. But the real verdict will not be written in legal briefs. It will be written in markets, in institutions, and in time.